Francesco Parrino is an Italian pianist and content creator who has amassed nearly 650,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he has done so creating piano covers of the most popular songs out there. But how good is he at the piano, and are his piano covers worth the hype? Well, hopefully today I'm going to find out, so let's get into it. Very nice. I do actually really love this song. And it's interesting because in this case, I don't know whether it's the case for the original song, but it's based around C major. And the chords are like a C major, but then a C major again with a different bass note, which is an E. And then an F major 7 chord, which keeps that E on the top, which means when you get this melodic idea, which is basically just the notes from a C major chord, C, G, and E, it fits super nicely over the top of each of these chords. And then in the right hand, he's basically just playing quick arpeggios. It is really cool because as soon as you've set those chords up, it then changes, so you get like an A in the bass, which completely changes the chord to like an A minor 7 chord. Then a C chord with a G in the bass, and then back to that F chord. And I think those chords are exactly the same for the verse. It's really cool because on the piano, if you play something literally on every 8th note or every quaver, it creates a really nice like bass layer for you to put the melody on top of, and it'll sound super pianistic. And actually, because he's playing this in C major, you can pretty much get away with playing most of the white keys and it's sounding okay. Like with the F major 7 chord, for example, if I add any notes that are in the scale, it just sounds like a jazzy version of the chord. So if I did something like... you can get away with a lot as long as it's in the scale. Wow, that's super interesting. I really like the fact that you put the melody in the left hand. That's quite difficult to do. Yeah, so normally when I suggest arranging pieces of music, I always suggest having the left hand play the chords and the bass note, and in the right hand having the melody and then some of the chord notes. So for example, in this case, the melody is... it's just based around 3 notes. So for a C chord in the right hand, you might add a G to that because a G is in the chord. And then change it to an A because an A is in an F chord. And then in the left hand, you need the bass note along with maybe some other chord notes to fill out the texture. But as soon as you move the melody so that the melody is in the left hand, now you have to play the bass notes in the melody, and the right hand is solely responsible for the chords. which means your left hand is having to do a lot of work, going from the bass notes to the melody notes. then your right hand is just sitting there, kind of not doing much around the chord. It makes it much more challenging for one hand rather than spreading things out over two hands. Nice, so that chord movement is something that I tend to do quite a lot when I'm improvising, which is, if you move down by step in the bass notes, you can move chromatically and it sounds absolutely fine, even if it's not in the scale. So in this case, he had like an A minor chord, which went down to a C chord, but with a G in the bass, so down a step. And then he went down a half step to F sharp, and then down a half step again to the F major 7 chord. Just that chromatic movement adds a little bit of an eyebrow moment to the music. I really like the fact that he's adding a lot of light and shade into the music, and it's not all just one-dimensional, and he's adding these interesting chords in and things like that. That's really interesting. So he changed key there to D major. So that means he's now having to play all of the same stuff but in a different key. That is such a nice chord, that major 7 chord. Wow, he's adding so much character to this piece of music. It's really nice to listen to. And you can also see it in his body language. I've talked a little bit about body language before, but you can see that he's just like, he's been really careful with his movements because he's wanting the music to be so precise. I really love it, and I think the chord sequence of this song is so nice. Very beautifully played. And I always like it when there are surprises in pieces of music and people are not afraid of using kind of interesting chords. For example, a lot of the time in that piece of music, instead of just playing normal triad chords, he added like seconds in, or ninths, which adds some real crunch to the sound. And it was also moving in some really interesting directions. If you move the bass notes by step, for the most part, you can get away with so many interesting chords that you wouldn't think you can get away with. So instead of just doing this, you could do something like this. Or like this. And doing things like that and straying away from the original slightly, I think make piano covers so much better. Yeah, so the chord sequence for Creep is a really interesting one, and it's because it's really unconventional. So you get like a G major chord, and then you get B major chord, which doesn't actually belong to the key of G major, so it feels really kind of weird. And then you get a C major chord, which doesn't work with a B major chord, and then it goes to C minor. So you get a series of chords that aren't as conventional as just playing it in a normal major scale. I think it's what makes this song so iconic. I think he's very good at making his piano playing really rhythmic. So he's got this kind of... it's like a rhythmic motif that he's got going on. A really easy way of making your piano playing sound more rhythmic is by stressing certain beats of the bar. So for example, if you are playing a C major chord, for example, and you play something on every 8th note, if you stress different notes in the chord, then you'll get some really interesting rhythmic ideas. And that's kind of what he's doing here. He's got certain beats of the bar that he's stressing, which make it sound quite percussive. That was interesting. So I did like a tuplet into the music where like the notes don't quite fit in the bar. Just a quick interlude to let you know that I've just released my first ever members only video reacting to and completely dissecting a subscriber's piano playing. So if you want to learn a lot more about music and see how I would approach learning a piece of music, then consider joining with the join button down below. Let's get back into the video. I should also probably mention that he's a Steinway artist, which means he gets to play it on this amazing piano. And you can tell from the sound quality of a Steinway that it's got like a really soft action, which means the keys press down really easily. There's a lot less resistance to playing the notes like you might get on other pianos. And that's why you practice your scales, kids. I think it goes to show with piano covers like this that most of the time the chords in a pop song are quite simple. It's just the same chords over and over again, and in this song it is literally the same chords throughout the entire thing. But it's what you do with those chords that make it so interesting, and in the original it gets quite chaotic. In this version he's kind of expanded on the piano, and then he's brought it back down again to this simple idea in one place on the piano. If everything in the song was one dynamic, one volume, and one part of the piano that didn't change, it would sound very, very boring having the same chord sequence throughout the entire thing. But because it starts simple and expands outwards and then comes back to that simplicity, it sounds super interesting even though it's only 4 chords. That is one of my favourite chord voicings that you just played as well, which is a 10th. So that's where you play a normal chord, but you take the middle note out and you play the middle note an octave higher, so you get GDB rather than GBD. Playing tenths like that is a really easy way of making your piano playing sound warm. Another very nice one, and another one where he finished with the left hand playing the melody. So that's obviously one of the techniques he likes to use to vary it up a little bit and make it sound much more interesting. I know I literally say everything is interesting in these videos, but something else that is interesting is the fact that he started this piece using tenths as well. Because this is just an F major chord, but he's taken the middle note out and put it on top. This is literally my favourite Beatles song. The thing is with all the Beatles songs is that their melodies are so simple and they're really memorable, but the chords that go under them are kind of usually 8 or 16 bar phrases rather than 4 chords, which you would get in a modern pop song. And because a lot of their songs were either written on the piano or guitar, kind of by improvising and messing around and finding sounds that they liked, a lot of the chords that they use are conventional chords, but they don't always stick to one scale or one key. They're just kind of sounds that sound really nice together. And I think when you're writing a piece of music, you can get kind of bogged down in thinking what is right, which is why the Beatles music is so successful, because they were much more focused on what sounds good. Once again, he's taking opportunities like that high bit to really just like break up the music and make sure it's not all one thing. And I think you can really tell a good pianist when you're watching them and not really concerned about whether they're going to get it right or wrong or what they're playing. You're just really enjoying listening to the music. And I definitely get that feeling with Francesco. Really nice. I mean, you can tell he really understands music by the choices that he's making. So, for example, those 3 notes were A, B, C sharp, which kind of outline an A major chord, which feels like it needs to resolve to D minor, which is where it goes next. But then he decided to change the melody using a G, dropping to an F, and a G doesn't belong to a D minor chord, so it's a suspension, but it drops to an F, which does belong to the chord. So you get this kind of tension and release, which feels really satisfying, especially from the notes that lead into it, which outline the A major chord. So you can tell that he knows what he's doing and he really does understand music. Very nice. I really enjoyed that, and he is a very good player. And his piano covers are really solid, but they're not boring. He has a lot of interesting things in there that make them really nice to listen to and tell much more of a complete story. If you want to see my reaction to another classically trained pianist, Ayato Sumino, who did the 7 levels of playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, then head on through and I will see you there.